And am I sharing my screen at all?
Yes.
Not yet. No, I'm sharing my screen. All right, folks. So today we are going to do two things. Today we might, in view of this sale going on, we might not have time for a research paper reading. We'll do more research paper readings next time. But I want to cover a couple of these loose ends before we move on to computer vision and multimodal models and so forth. So the topics are semantics chunking. What does that mean? And how do you attach metadata to your search, right? How do you search by categories and so on and so forth? So we'll do both of those. Both of those are interesting topics. So I hope you have had your pot of coffee and you are fresh now. What is semantic chunking? This question is best answered in the negative. When do you know that your chunking doesn't make sense? Right? So for example, if you have a sentence, let's take any sentence, the cow jumped over the moon. Do you think it is excellent chunking to chunk at this level? These are chunks 1 and chunks 2, C1, C2. Would you say this is good chunking? Why is this not good chunking?
Too micro.
Yeah. See, the thing is the cow J has no meaning. Umped over the moon leaves you guessing what umped over the moon, right? And so that is a bad idea. So you might say, well, we can make sure that we don't. So let's try to improve upon this bad situation. So this is bad chunking. Let's do a little bit better. Once again, I'll write this sentence, the cow jumped moon. And I say, well, let me do better. The cow, a slight improvement, isn't it? But you may say, well, jumped over the moon. What jumped over the moon? The cow did what? Right? It still doesn't, there's a semantic break in it, right? You took something that was one thought. One way to look at it is never break a thought. Never break a thought. That is common sense, isn't it? You would rather break text. If you have a very long running text, you would like to chunk it. But the one minimum requirement you would have is, or desirable you would have is, never break a thought. Isn't it? So you say, this is not good. And the way it should have been is, the cow jumped over the moon this is better. So you can say we can finish at a sentence boundary. So this is word boundary. This is sentence boundary. Right? And then you say, well, sometimes a thought is expressed not in one sentence, but many sentences, isn't it? For example, if you look at Dickens' beginning of his book, The Tale of Two Cities, it starts with, it was the worst of times. If you were to just break it here, you actually lose the chain of thought. Even if you took the entire sentence, you still break the chain of thought. Actually, the whole chain of thought is moving towards a punchline. Right? The whole thought, if you notice, it's a literary form in which, see, there are many ways to write a paragraph, right? In school, you have all been through different literary means, or actually not been through, because not every education system teaches it properly. But when you write a paragraph, there are at least There are three ways of writing it. One is to write whichever way you want to write it, or let me call it the ingenious way of writing it. A paragraph is whatever you want a paragraph to be, right? So then there are better ways of writing a paragraph. One is to start with a thesis statement. See, sometimes just a paragraph can just be a description of something, descriptive paragraph, right? For example, you're saying a car is made up of wheels, body, steering wheel, whatnot. Then it makes sense that it's descriptive. Then a descriptive paragraph has a flow in which there's equal balance on all sides, right? It's describing something. That's all right. But if you write it in an essay form, or if you're trying to do persuasive writing, there are two ways of doing persuasive writing or literary writing. One is, and you'll find it if you read the New York Times, etc., etc. Any of these high-quality journalistic or literary writers, you'll see that broadly speaking, they follow the convention that if it is a paragraph, it may begin with a thesis statement. Right. For example, a thesis statement could be something like AI. It is really a good idea to master, let's say, RAG. That's a claim. It's a thesis. And that claim cannot just stand there and have meaning unless you write corroborative or supporting statements in the rest of the paragraph, right? It is the easiest form of writing, persuasive writing. You start with the thesis, and then you give evidence. You build supporting evidence to it. You give arguments to persuade that the thesis is correct. And the other form that you do is like this one. You build the person towards something, and then you end with a punchline. Punchline or thesis, right? Jokes tend to be like that, right? They're building towards a punchline or towards a thesis, right? And Charles Dickens, it was the worst of times, the best of times, if you read it. It is like that. And so I'll just bring it up because one or two examples should be enough to bring home the point that I'm trying to make with semantic chunking. Let me see. How would I do that? Okay, so I'll just blow up just the first paragraph. This is how the book opens. I suppose I will let you read through. Let's see, it does. Oh.
Hi, my name is Joanna Rodkey. I'm the former assistant director of the Dickens Project and currently president of the Friends of the Dickens Project. And for my selection for Dickens to Go, I'd like to read the first paragraph
So just
of
pay
chapter
attention.
1, the period, from book the first, Recalled to Life, from A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic.
So when you read this paragraph, look from a technical perspective. If you're chunking, where would you chunk? Right? That's a question you have to answer after listening.
Belief. It was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. So I chose this.
No, we'll leave that. So, as you know, this is a famous paragraph. This is how the book Tale of Two Cities opens. And this people have found a universal resonance with that. For example, in the Indian context, if you think August 15th, 1947, on the one hand, India was becoming independent from colonial rule. On the other hand, there was the horrendous, unbelievable massacre that was the partition taking place, right, with cruelty on all sides. So you can see that these are universal themes. Now, when you deal with things like that, why did I bring it up? I brought it up because surely if you're chunking, you should not lose the thought. But the whole paragraph is the thought, isn't it? But if you think, this is an example where the entire, and you realize that it moves towards a punchline. The last line is that it surprises you that you're describing something in the past. Actually, they were talking about the French, he's talking about the French Revolution and all the cruelty that went with it. Very much like India becoming free and the partition. For some people, it was the beginning of a great age, freedom from tyranny, right? For others, if you were a nobleman, right, it was a terribly dark period for you. So many things in literature, many things in human understanding are captured not in, the whole thought is captured in one paragraph or more paragraphs. So the question therefore becomes, what is the size of thought? You see that, right? Because if you want to chunk at thought boundaries, fundamentally the question is, what is the size of your thought, of a thought, and how can a machine discover it? You can say, I'm going to chunk it or break the text at paragraph boundaries. But that is no guarantee that the thought is not divided across multiple paragraphs. Do you see that? You might say, well, there are authors, for example, there was an old Brit author, Francis Bacon, whose one thought would span 3 pages. Actually, he was notorious for writing a sentence, one sentence that would span 2 pages. Right? So that's the fundamental problem when you do this. So then the question is, why not forget about chunking altogether? Why should we chunk at all? Just to whet your recollection. Because if you don't chunk, a long text may have many thoughts. And when does semantic chunking work best? When one embedding vector represents one thought, one semantic thing. That's the ideal combination. So you don't want to have the text too long on the fear that it may have many thoughts. Read a Wikipedia page. Many things are history of something and so on and so forth. So just do it. Let's do that. In contrast, let's go and read Wikipedia on something. What should we search in Wikipedia?
Independence. American.
Very sad. So if you look at it, it starts with what it is, but then it goes into the history, which is a completely different thought, isn't it? Right? And so on and so forth. And many things, how it was celebrated. You don't want the entire page to be one piece of chunk that you create a vector out of. Because if it has many thoughts, then that vector becomes the average of those semantic vectors. In effect, average vector of that. It points nowhere. Basically, it points in a general direction. Does that make sense? So chunking is necessary. Yet the fundamental problem in chunking is to answer the question, what is the size of thought here? What are the boundaries of a thought? You see that, right? Mm-hmm. That's what makes it itself into an AI problem, right? Why you can't chunk by silly rules like every 300 characters just break it, or after so many words break it, or even paragraph boundaries break it. So people have created many imperfect ways of chunking, right? And we are in a situation where imperfection rules, nobody has found the golden rule way of chunking. But the reason I'm mentioning it is the problem is harder than most people realize, because some of you came to me and said, tell me how to chunk correctly. Right? And if there was an answer, I would have given you right away. Isn't it? It's a hard thing. You have to find. Now, observe this Wikipedia way of writing text, and I'll contrast that with New York Times. And let me show you two different pieces of text. Let's take this piece of text. Has made his reservationist account. So this is written by two writers. Actually, this is sort of an opinion piece. Let me go through something in business that is a deal book. Let's look at it.
Good luck finding that, Asif.
So is the sky the limit for blah? What difference, blah, blah, blah? If the round comes together, you notice that there are multiple thoughts, each of which is there roughly around paragraph boundaries, right? One little piece, you can put it as a thought. But there are times when New York Times gives opinion pieces. Same, now I'm not even changing the newspaper. I'm just going to the same one, but let's go to opinions. And what you will notice is some columnist, and depends upon author to author. Let's go here. Opinions. Where's the opinion? Opinion. And who should I pick? I don't know these names. Let's randomly pick a Mr. Brooks. Brooks at least sounds familiar. What I cover, contact, featured, latest featured ones. This is politics, so I'll avoid it. Junkification of American life also doesn't seem very nice, but okay, here's a iPad. So this is descriptive. This is very easy to chunkify, relatively speaking. Right? The phenomenon described as found. So, but if you go to some other opinion pieces, I don't know which ones. Let me avoid politics altogether. It's hard these days, isn't it, with the political season on us? Yeah. Opinions is just politics. So don't people have opinion on something else? Okay. All right. I give up. So maybe TechCrunch, some opinion on physics. Physics. Tech maybe, right? Tech. By the way, where did the word meme come from? Anybody knows? Meme. Memes. Tech memes, right? This is. Where did the word meme come from? Nobody knows. It has an interesting. Do I know? I know. Okay. It was created by this guy, Richard Dawkins, who posited that in cultures, viruses spread, right? What do viruses do? Or bacteria do? They find a host, like for example, COVID or whatever, flu virus, will attack you, use your body to multiply, right? Because it knows your weakness. It knows that you are a good host. Like it can get into you, use you as a food supply to multiply, and then get into another host. So meme, he posited that culturally, there are thoughts, there are things that will be viral. Like you will get attracted to it, you will read it, and you will feel compelled to spread it. Right? So it is actually a weakness of the human mind he was talking about. In the internet age, of course, the evidence is all around us. The internet memes are everywhere. So let's take an overview of the California. Trouble is, a lot of these things can get political.
It's a good compromise.
Open, yeah. He has until to decide. So you notice that here, the thoughts are at literally, and let me pick a paragraph, Yoshimashi, why does. Here, the thought boundaries are pretty long. It's spanning pretty much the whole article, if almost. Right? It's pretty like multiple paragraphs make up a thought. But I have seen articles in which literally a paragraph will have 5 different thoughts. Right? Why is this important? The reason is when you do vector embeddings, when you generate vectors, you see it very distinctly, 2 authors. One author's one sentence and the next sentence, the cosine distance between them, right, is very close. In another author, the cosine distance between one sentence and the next is far, right? So a lot of people initially tried to use this technique. They would meaningfully, see, all of these have a very direct implication, practical, which is why I'm mentioning it. See, one easy way you could do it is, suppose it's landing here, one thought, one sentence, S1, you have the next sentence, S2, S3, they are all close by. You would say they should all be in one chunk. Suddenly you get S4. You know, it's a good boundary of a thought, isn't it? Right?
But the meaning is also same.
No, the meaning will change, semantic, because you're looking at the cosine between sentence I and sentence I plus 1. And you're basically saying that if the cosine is below a threshold, let us say 0.1, then break chunkify. That's a good chunk boundary, right? This is the way that most chunkifiers today go about doing it. But thought is hierarchical. In other words, see, if you look at a book, it contains, the whole book is one giant thought, isn't it? Thermodynamics, right? Then you'll have, or let's take something more like transformers. Then there'll be a chapter on attention, self-attention. There'll be a chapter on BERT. There'll be a chapter on causal models, decoders, then visual transformers, etc. So thought inherently is hierarchical, right? Group topics, subjects, topics. Topics will have paragraphs, sections. So one easy way is that if the book has that hierarchical structure, you find chapters and sections and subsections, you can rest assured that that is a good place to start, isn't it? No chunk should cross section boundaries or subsection boundaries or chapter boundaries. That doesn't make sense. Are we together? So you could start with that. Start with by just saying if the document has those elements given, hierarchical elements given, start with that and then ask this question, okay, within this subsection, I find all of this text, so many paragraphs of text. How do I chunkify it thereafter? That would be a meaningful way to go about it. Now, more practically speaking, on your web portal, now, so that is the big thing towards understanding or looking into the size of thoughts, basically. We will now go and look at the course portal, which from the traffic, I noticed that many of you haven't visited lately. So, yeah.
You could go back to the price.
Yep.
So that question of S1, the previous one and the current one, and comparing them.
Yeah.
To chunking, what we also do, but one thing we I always add in mind is it works when it goes linearly down the graph, right? But what if there's a say, I mean, like let's say second paragraph and the 10th paragraph had kind of a similar thought.
Oh, no. You don't ever put these together. Never do that. Never do that. Never do that. Right. So what I've done on your course portal is you'll notice that, there's a section called semantic chunking. Oh, I'll go to the student. Do you say this, guys? Tell me you say this.
Yeah.
Semantic chunking. So read this article. Now, in terms of libraries, the best library I would suggest is the SemChunk library. Right? Just go straight at it. And I would say that if you want a path of just install pip, install SemChunk and use it. They have been thinking about it for quite some time, and they do a pretty good job. Right? Do that. Yeah. What they do actually beats LangChain and Llama Index, and they have benchmarks to prove it somewhere. Nevertheless, if you want to, also see how leading people like LangChain and Llama Index have done it. And having studied their chunkers, because it's good to know that the topic is big and people have been trying, and they have created many algorithms to do it, go use SemChunk. Simply put. Does that make sense, guys? Right. That is it.
Question.
Yeah.
So when you saw that article, if there is a statement or a question and 3 paragraphs, right? Will SemChunk, can we work with that to say include all of them in one chunk?
Yeah, it can do that. So there are a lot of parameters you can tune and basically do. So chunking, guys, all I want to say is, guys, if you're learning this topic, you need to become good at smart chunking, good chunkings. Chunking is a semantic topic because the fundamental problem that you're tackling is an unsolvable problem in the general case. What is the size of thoughts here, right? And there are many, many techniques that you see. It's not unsolvable. I take it back. You can do it, but it's harder than you think. It needs more careful planning, thinking than you are used to. And if any one of you believe that none of these are perfect and you want to know what techniques I have developed, here is the thing. If you guys actually finish all the projects in this bootcamp and give a demonstration, then I'll release my way of doing it, which I claim is the best. Right. And I've been assured by previous batches,
Asif,
using it in their companies. Yeah, go ahead.
As part of this feeding into the semantic chunking, right? Do we need is it preferred to do some pre-processing of the documents before it's being fed?
Absolutely. For example, you want to throw away the copyright information and all of those things, right? You want to throw away most likely the reference at the end of it, the indices and so on and so forth. Pre-processing of documents before before chunking and storing. See, that's a pipeline. The reality that when you go to production and to do it well is very hard. You see tons of companies, every single company is saying we are doing RAG. What are they doing? They're just downloading an open source software, pointing it to their document and talking to it, right? So they're saying, oh, no, look at that. And it's good. At least do that much. In the 2024, if companies are not using RAG, it's practically, it should be a criminal offense, right? To not do that. That much they should be using. Nevertheless, are they doing it smartly? They are not. And if you create see, here's the thing, just off-the-shelf cookie cutter solution versus something that you do properly, the difference is one can, like, especially if you're doing if your company's, it is mission critical to your company, it can be a huge difference maker to your revenue stream. I say this as a, I mean, to some extent, I will come to you. I can give you evidence. One group, for example, literally indexed, and I can't name the company, but let's just say there's some gazillion-dollar company, indexed all their code and their bug database, the issue ticketing system. Ragged it, got the answer, coupled it up with another technology that you will learn. And by the way, there were students here. They coupled it up with another thing that you will learn, code generation and so forth. In one day, they solved something like 16, 17 of the very serious bugs. They understood the issue, the machine understood the issue, scanned through the code base, thought through solutions, and fixed it. Each of those tickets had been outstanding for months, and the estimated time of fix was weeks. And it started that when I taught them the technique, literally at 11 o'clock in the morning, they were skeptical that machines can do it. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3, 4 in the afternoon, they just were like so excited that they were just waiting for Monday to happen to take it to their workplace. Right? So these things are very real, guys. If you do it properly, see, if you ask yourself, why are you in this course? What now that, well, you know, RAG, there's so many tools for RAG. Why not download one of them, Llama Index, and be done with it? The point is, you can have off-the-shelf solution, or you can make something perfect that really works for your use case. That's the difference. All right. Any other questions?
Now, if I am on a topic, I have multiple authors on the same topic. And my goal is to the LLM to answer something.
Yeah.
Now, I would like an answer, and then it has to list the summary of the for a particular query from particular author. Is that where I need to do metadata, or will it?
You can do all of these things we're going to cover in the RAG course. So if this topic interests you guys, RAG is see, here's the thing. AI does many things, machine learning does many things. But if you look at the last 2 decades, 2003, 2004 onwards, till almost almost till like 2020, the dominant use case used to be the recommender engine, right? Every company, the whole Silicon Valley was just making recommender engines, or as advertisement engines, as retail recommendations, as this or that. It was a dominant use case. These days with Gen AI, there's one more dominant use case, which is RAG. Right? So RAG is really going to be the breadwinner for 2 decades to do it well. Not just take off-the-shelf solution, but to do it well and do it properly. So it's a deep topic. The topic has become so big, and this course has to move on to the next topic. Yeah, if you are really interested in it, come to the RAG course. You can come now. You can come in February or something like that at Support Vectors, or if it suits you. I mean, I don't want to just market my own courses. Go take RAG somewhere else. But RAG is a vast topic. Actually, I don't know how deep other places go, but it's certainly worth learning somehow by reading papers, by looking at it. Doing it really, really well is going to be the dominant use case, and therefore a dominant breadwinner for the next decade or so.
So for doing those attributions, you need advanced RAG techniques.
Yeah. It's not hard, but it will take time for me to go into.
No, I'm not necessarily. I just wanted the general directions.
Yeah, graph RAG. The answer to your simple question is graph RAG.
Oh, graph RAG. Okay.
It's one of the techniques in RAG called graph RAG. Yeah. Any other questions, guys, before we close this topic? Oh, lots of questions.
Ask just a question on the RAG itself, right? So I think
microphone, so others can hear. Yeah.
So just a question on the RAG itself, right? I think one of the most use cases in most of the companies are the data is scattered, right? I mean, it's a manufacturing or not. And everybody's trying to get a hands around it to be able to at least, RAG will play, I think, the biggest role. How the work which is done for unstructured data, right? I mean, data may not be structured down to that. How is that?
Oh, so that will come to, in this course itself, will come to document AI. So in other words, how to extract structured information or rationalize. It's the same thing. See, in the old world, what would you do? Even if data came structured, it wouldn't be in the format that you liked it. So there was the whole industry of ETL, extraction, transformation, and loading. And then in big data world, it became extraction, load, and transformations and such. Right? And all of that industry is there. A similar thing is happening. One of the big use cases of LLMs and transformers is to create out of unstructured information, to create structure. So think of it as ETL++, like things that ETL could never possibly do. You do it with transformers, and we'll learn some of those techniques in this course. Right? So it is coming there. Who was there? Mandeep.
Similar line, right? When we say OpenAI and Claude and all, they are training their models, a lot of tokens.
Yep.
They would also be parsing web pages, documents,
Yes.
To do some chunking here also.
Very much.
Is there any, like how are they doing the chunking?
There is no magic actually. See, here's the thing. They don't care because they're pre-training the model, right? So the bar for them is much lower. They're not solving an enterprise use case. They're trying to create tokens for a to pre-train a model. So the quality of chunking that they need not be too great. The bar is much lower for them. Yeah.
The embedding, the analysis, jumping, all are considered to one.
Yeah.
So what is the final output? Whether you have a sentence in a sentence or constants, how the system is.
Oh, no. The system will exactly reproduce the text that was there in the chunk. Because you maintain a back pointer. For the vector, you store somewhere which chunk of the document it came from. In the database, you have the chunk of the document. You just reproduce that chunk.
Really considering for research.
Yes.
The rest are all considering.
Yes. That's it. All right. Any other questions, guys? Go ahead, Sanjay.
In this example, we are still doing only semantic search rather than summarize. Right?
Yeah. So now the next part is, so far I've limited it to search just to be focused. But you realize that in a RAG pipeline, the search results go to the LLM. And what LLMs are very good at is answering your question. And as part of answering your question, they also do abstractive summarization. Namely, take the essence or abstract the meaning or the substance out of all the search results and do it. See, that's the reason, for example, I can't even remember when was the last time I visited Google search these days. Most of the time we use LLMs. In fact, I've created my own pipeline in which it goes and gets the search. Actually, I'm paying for Google search because I'm using APIs which do the Google search in the background, treat that, get search results. Whereas I could have just freely searched Google, right? But I would rather pay and feed it into my own pipeline, my whole agentic reasoning RAG pipeline to answer. Basically, I have something like Perplexity. And that brings me now, guys, to the project. This is a project for those of you who are adventurous. You will encounter this project in the LLM2, that RAG course. But basically, think about it. What does Perplexity do that you can't, having learned what you have? Now, they I'm sure, do it much more intensely, much more industrial scale. But in principle, you know the website perplexity.ai?
Yeah.
How many of you use it, right? Yeah. So think about it. What is it doing? It's getting search results, and then it is using an LLM. It's a RAG, isn't it? It's RAG, but well executed. So the difference between an idea and a well executed idea is in a few $100 million. So now you are capable. So in case you want to replace Perplexity, go ahead. Do your startup. Work hard. You might compete. Go ahead, Sanjay.
So I was going to ask the question very late, just on Perplexity. They're not doing any LLM. He says that in the interview. They're using existing foundation.
Absolutely. They're RAG, right? Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's a RAG. And their value is also, it's kind of like what we covered, but a little bit, what else are they doing?
Oh, they're doing, so for that, RAG itself is a vast topic and they're doing it very well. So for that, for example, they have knowledge graphs, they have things, those things, right? And let me just say it this way. When people say they're just doing RAG, it's both true and false. It's true in the sense that RAG, yes, that's it. But false in the sense that they have no idea how deep and vast the subject of RAG has become. Right? So
they might be having a lot of subject matter experts to really figure it out.
It started by one of the IIT kids. What's his name?
No, he's actually IIT Madras and Berkeley PhD and Google DeepMind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very bright kid. Yeah, very bright kid. Yeah. So that's that. That's that.
So other for semantic search, right? You have one is you have a vector databases because you may have, some of them are doing with the graph, right? So what's the
No. How do you hybridize all of them
Yeah.
to make, see, two ways of doing it. Graph is an empowerment. A vector database is a core necessity in a RAG. There are people, somewhat foolish, I would imagine, who are saying, I have Neo4j and I'm doing graph and therefore I'm doing RAG and so on. So they're somewhat misguided. And they also have drunk the Kool-Aid from these corporations a bit too much. Don't do it that way. See, suppose I'm new, so obviously, let me first go off there. How do I do that? They keep changing the system all the time so that I